Fed rate cut gets a mixed response. What it means for Bitcoin and alts. Burning question. Burning questions. Inquiring minds want to know, right? Hey guys, it's Keith Allen. Hope you have navigated the volatility thus far safely. I think there's more to come. And today we're going to climb into exactly what's happening in the charts, what this mixed response is all about. And more importantly, look for clues that can help us figure out where we're going from here. Hey guys, again, it's Keith Allen. If you're new to the stream, I'm glad to have you. If you're an OG, oh man, I'm really grateful for you. For you new folks, I am a work from home dad. I am a full-time trader and I'm co-founder of Material Indicators, and I'm glad to have you with me. And as per usual, you OGs know I have some very simple requests for you before we get into the good stuff. And that is to do me the favor of returning the favor of me giving you this free content and alpha and insight. And in exchange, all I ask from you is you click a few buttons, right? Hit the like, hit the share, bring in some of your friends to the mix, help me grow the channel. And most importantly, comment. Live chat is open. This is for you. This is your time. So if you have questions, I will do my very best to answer them. If you have insights, please share them. This is a place to learn and share. So let's do that together. Let's go ahead and climb into the charts because we've got a lot to talk about today. Yesterday, of course, lots of speculation over what was going to happen with the FOMC meeting. 25 basis points was baked in. Like 97% of Fed watchers polled thought it would be a quarter point cut. Yet somehow there was all sorts of chatter over a 50 basis point cut. It wasn't happening. It was never going to happen. There's just no consensus for it at this stage. My thought was that going to a 50 basis point cut after all that we had seen telegraphed being a 25 basis point cut, a 50 basis point cut would have done three things. Number one, it would have been a shock to the market. And we know that Fed Chair Powell works very hard and diligently not to shock the market. Number two, it would have, in my opinion, and I did see some mixed opinions on this. Some were of the opinion that, 50 basis points, the market would go nuts with that, and that would just be rocket fuel. My perspective was a little different. My perspective was a 50 basis point cut. After so many people expected 25, a 50 basis point cut would signal to the market that things might be worse than they really are, or excuse me, things might be worse than they had portrayed. And number three, I think it would have signaled kind of a thinly veiled admission that the Fed was late, which we obviously know that they didn't want to do either. So 25 basis points is where it fell. And many thought that the market would just shoot up on a rate cut because, after all, rate cuts signal cheaper cash to borrow. And that means that people can put more money into investments, gets us more towards a risk-on period. The problem is all rate cuts are not created equal. It's what the environment is like. What's the economic environment like? And we know that we have an increase in unemployment. Inflation is still not under control. And there are concerns over what the longer term impact of this inflation is and potential unemployment is going to be like. So recessionary fears have a lot of people concerned, and rightfully so. That said, we have someone in office who is doing his very best to keep markets elevated. And so far, he's managed to do that. Price as it sits, let's go ahead and look at the first chart here, because it doesn't really matter what happened in the past. What matters is where we go from here. And I think that we're in a different environment than we have been in the past, right? I'm not going to get deep into the 4-year cycle narrative or anything like that here. But it's clear that we have institutional demand keeping prices elevated at the moment. So we did get a bit of a shakeout. And I did think that yesterday was going to be more of a sell the news event. And it was to a certain degree. We saw pumps and dumps really starting over the weekend and through yesterday. right? We had a wick below. Let me go ahead and share this chart, and we can analyze that and try and figure out where we're going to go from here. So as you can see, we had this big doji candle yesterday, which wicked below the trend line, and that was not something that anybody really wanted to see. Now, what are the positives here? Let's look at the dynamics of this move and what's positive and maybe what's not so positive. So, from a positive, it is a another support test off of the 50-day moving average, right? And that's been tested once, twice. This one might count close enough to the pin 3 times, 4 times. Now, I would have liked to see this one not make a lower low from here. But nonetheless, that's a very short-term view, right? That's a micro view of what's going on. If we look at it on the weekly time frame, it's a higher low for sure, right? So that's positives. And on the weekly time frame, this is off of the 21-week moving average. Those are positives. Reclaiming this trend line, also very, very positive in my opinion. We see that the key moving averages are on an uptrend here, meaning the green 21 is on a trajectory to golden cross with the blue 100. And then, of course, that needs to carry, back up here. This is a signal that we have a developing uptrend. And that, of course, has happened since we bottomed out around this timescape level, around that 107K level, which was the Q1 open. So those are all inherently bullish. What is not terribly bullish, at least for Bitcoin, is the fact that we have some sell pressure, number one. Big block of ask liquidity has shown up here today. It has been, it looks like it's been hit a little bit. I think this was, I posted this chart earlier and it was about 45 million. So some of that has thinned out a little bit. But nonetheless, we have a heavier concentration of ask liquidity than we do of bid liquidity in the near range. Brown whales buying to some degree. Purple whales still somewhat timid here, right? Still kind of chopping through it here, at least on that higher time frame. If we drill down into the lower time frames, we can see that brown has been mixed, right? This makes me think this is not just one entity. We've got some buying and some selling happening here. If we go to the daily, we can see that there's some profit taking up in here, right? So it's just not, it's not consistent. This to me does not look like, oh, hey, it's a rate cut, we're off to the races and we're back to accumulation mode. Brown looks more like that, and Brown has looked more like that throughout most of the year, for sure. So they have been on a steady accumulation, whereas purple, which has historically had the most influence over Bitcoin price, has been distributing since back in May, and recently, after that recent support test down to that 107 range, started buying again. But in the past few days and since really the week, it's been a mix of buying and selling. So no big commitment out of purple here at the moment. I look for them to be unified at some point and get back to accumulation. So I think that the macro outlook remains strong. We know that institutional demand is as strong as it's ever been. So that's a positive for Bitcoin, but we could have some short-term volatility. And there's a number of things that point to that. One, if we go over to the MI dashboard and we look at our beta, alts to BTC beta chart, I want you to look here. So there's a couple of ways to do this. You can look at data visualization here and just look at the colors, right? you can see that we are transitioning from a blue period, which is a period of high beta, uh, to a somewhat neutral, and then one would think we go to a period of low beta soon. You can see the transition right here. We're almost at the midpoint. You can see that the high beta had peaked, and now we have low beta kind of swapping, right? So we are right at that intersection. What this means is that when we're in periods of high beta, that typically marks local bottoms for Bitcoin, and so we're off of that, and so that means we could be getting toppy here locally. I don't think this is a cycle top. I think this is a locally toppy situation. Not exactly there yet, but headed there, right? We get there when we move into a period of low beta where it gets up, much higher here, right? So this is something I'm watching here. Just an indication of where things are trending in the short term. We can look at this a little bit differently and look at let's look at correlation between alts and BTC. I might need a refresh on that. Let's go to, there it is. All right. Similarly, you can see a transition in color here, right? And blue was capitulation. That's when we got down to that 107 range. And now we see this changing a bit. We're in a period of optimism, and this may be dangerous, right? To be too optimistic here. Well, we know, as we just saw, that we're entering a period of low beta dominance, and to take this a little bit further and kind of well, you'll see where the narrative is headed here. Let's look at price returns and drawdowns. And this is the broader market, right? 14-day rolling returns for all pairs, at least all pairs on Binance. So this is like 400 some odd pairs. And you can see again color transitioning, right? So this was kind of that capitulation. These darker blue areas are the capitulations where things bottom out. And now we see recovery where the vast majority of alts are moving into profits, and many of them moving into double-digit profits. Doge up 28% here in the past 14 days. ETHFI up nearly 40%. FLM 22%. All right. So, in terms of this, you might want to look for the ones that haven't had the huge runs yet. Pendle's pretty interesting. 9%, 10% in the past 14 days. Let's see, where'd it go? There you go, 9.5%. So this tells me alts are starting to get some fuel here. And a chart that I've shared with you several times before will give us a little bit more insight into that and what's happening with alts. So what I'm wondering here is, here we go. This is kind of my metric on alt season, right? We have seen the alt season indicators that say that we are up in the range that is typically defines alt season. And so the conditions are there, the indicators are there, and now the price action is starting to happen. If you watched last week, I had drawn this local top line, which we popped above, headed to the weekend. Then things nose down coming into the rate cut, and now we're back above it, headed towards a $1 trillion market cap for total 3ES. Now, yes, the sum of all alts is more than $1 trillion. This is total 3ES. Total 3ES is the top 100 coins minus, so excluding Bitcoin, excluding ETH, and excluding stable coins. So this is a basket of the top 100 by market cap, excluding those coins. And you can see it has now broken local resistance and aiming for this $1 trillion market cap line. That's That's largely psychological, but we know that psychological actually, matters in this game. It has an impact. But what's more important here is the divergences, right? We now have total 3ES on the rise. We have Bitcoin dominance again declining. Yesterday it was moving up heading into this rate cut. Yesterday, heading into the rate cut, we saw, and in times of uncertainty, we will see capital rotate into stables and rotate since the um, evolution of the institutional, market for Bitcoin. We've seen a lot of during those uncertain times, we see a lot rotate back into Bitcoin as well. And so now it's rotating out of Bitcoin. That dominance is moving towards alts and to a lesser degree, ETH. As you can see here, ETH is actually on the decline right now. So this is the recipe right here that you look for in terms of altcoins thriving. You have declining. Well, now we have a little uptick here as well, but it's pretty flat in terms of Bitcoin dominance. But declining everywhere, pretty much. But total 3ES. So that's a signal to me that capital is starting to rotate to these alts. And so my question is, are we in a situation where we got the rate cut, it's macro bullish, and ultimately a high tide is going to raise all boats and we're going to see everything go up? Not necessarily proportionately, but we'll see everything go up? Or are we going to see some capital rotate out of Bitcoin and potentially even out of ETH for a short period of time to boost this alt rally? We can call it alt season, I guess, because that's what people want to do. I just, if you've been listening to me throughout the year, I have been skeptical as to whether or not what we will see in an alt season looks the same in 2025, this point in 2025, as it did in previous cycles. And I don't think it looks the same as it looked in 2021, for example. So I would be cautious. I would be very selective about the coins that you choose. There is massive upside potential on a lot of coins, okay? But they are not all created equally. So focus on quality or things that you at least have conviction in for the longer term. And that conviction needs to be something that you've come up with on your own, not necessarily because some random dude on social media said so, myself included. Don't do what I do. I'm just trying to show you what to look for. So this is what I'm watching. This is what I'm watching very, very closely. And so my thought is what we could see happen, and especially since we see this, this block of ask liquidity concentrated up here. Now, if we had seen big blocks of bid liquidity moving in, I might feel differently. I would feel differently. Not might. I would most definitely feel differently. I mean, we do see some of it stair stepping up a little bit here, which is a positive sign. But what we don't see is a fat block of bids right here holding price up to push through this. And so that's what it's going to take. If we were to see this right here, and this isn't a lot, right? This is $14.5 million, but look what it did. So, and this was with no intention of getting filled. This somehow, I think it triggers algos, right? When we see blocks of liquidity move around like this and price react, it is essentially trying to push price in the opposite direction. And so we have a little bit moving up here, but what we really want to see, if we really want to see things break through this 118 level and then have a crack at 120, you can see there's some more asks stacked at 119. But if we really want to see things power through this, we need to see more bid liquidity come into this range, and we need to see purple whales join brown in this buying. So this looks very impressive on brown, by the way, right? So this is a normalized view, and it's worth noting that in this bind CVD, on the normalized view, all of these order classes are, what you're seeing is on a scale of 0 to 1, scale of 1 relative to itself. So if I click out everything else and we just focus on what these whales are doing, brown whales have bought and sold, um, their net volume pretty much they are peaked right now, right? This is the most volume they have net purchased in the past 7 days. And if we take this down to the daily, same thing, right? They're peaked for the day. Now, if they buy more, then that becomes the new number one. Now, how much actual cash is this? Is this a huge amount that should push price up, or is it incremental? So let's take a look now at the absolute CVD, which tells us what the cash value is of these moves. And we can see that through the course of the day, really just the last several hours, Brown was down 1.2 million on the day and down 2.5 million, and then started coming up. So coming up from 2.5 million, 2.5 million down, they are up 10 million. So roughly 12 million, 12 and a half, 13 million for the day, which isn't horrible, right? These are market orders, mind you. Meanwhile, Purple, with all of their selling, is still at 6 million for the day. And it looks like maybe, yep. Okay, so not massive amounts, right? Is the point here. And the point of that exercise is to show you that the normalized view doesn't give you a clear perspective of how much actual cash is flowing. So it's always good to check the absolute CVD to see what the real values are. Again, because there's so much buying and selling in a short time out of Brown, who typically does not trade very frequently, this makes me think there's multiple entities in this schema here. And the fact that Purple is not just all in buying with Brown makes me think that this is still not accumulation for them. Not at least, right? They're off the lows for sure, but this is not full steam ahead after a rate cut. Now, when might that happen? Potentially in next month, right? We have at least 2 more rate cuts baked in for the year, potentially more. I've heard 4, I've heard 5, I've heard all kinds of numbers, to be honest with you. What I know is this: I know that there are only 2 Fed FOMC rate meetings left for the year, at least scheduled meetings. Sure, they could throw together an emergency meeting if they see the need. I think that also will not be received very well. An emergency meeting sounds like trouble. Now, if they announce at the next meeting that, hey, we're going to do a cut in October and we're going to do a cut in November, and then we'll determine December when we get there, then that would be okay. But if they do a cut in October and then very quickly come back and have an emergency meeting and do a cut in November, that's going to signal some concerns. At the moment, there is a consensus is 90% that there will be a cut down to the 375 to 4-point range. And what do they have for December? And another 1/4 point in December. So we'll just have to keep watching this, right? Now, if one of these becomes a 50-point cut, that might be interesting along the way. And these metrics change. These metrics change a couple times through the day. So this is something that you can watch as well. In terms of what we've seen in ETFs, this also signals a little less confidence in the current status than maybe a lot of bulls were hoping for. Right? Yesterday, there was some sell pressure on Bitcoin ETFs, and there was also sell pressure on ETH ETFs. Not a ton, but the point is, there wasn't a bunch of buying. Even even BlackRock bought incrementally compared to what their normal volume is. So those are things to keep in mind. It's why I think that we could potentially be seeing a, I don't know, maybe a bit of a trap at this point that could lure in some late longs, could lure in some early, could be luring in early shorts. We get that squeeze, and then those late longs, if they had not taken any profit, might get punished. And what I'm looking for here is a scenario where Bitcoin does cool off just a little bit, give these alts a chance to run, and then we have our next leg up. Timing wise, always not my strong suit to project long range, but I can tell you that historically, Q4 is when Bitcoin rocks, right? So November, December should really be interesting. So maybe it's the remainder of the month that's like this. Maybe that trickles into October, and we see alts rip for a bit. But I think when it comes down to the end of the year, the money is going to flow back into these more, how should I say, more reliable and more widely adopted assets, Bitcoin, ETH, Solana, etc. That's my expectation. I could be wrong. I've been wrong before. I do wrong very, very well. So these are just my thoughts and interpretations. You do what works for you, but I hope I've given you some things to think about. If you were of the belief that a rate cut meant moonshot, and gosh, I saw a lot of that noise on social media this week. You just haven't been paying attention to how things work, or you're just trying to bait people into your narrative and your trade, and then you're gonna dump on them. Don't be like that. That's not how I operate. Gonna leave it right there, guys. Hope that helps you out and gives you some insight. And I hope if you haven't done so yet, you'll do me that favor. Smash the buttons, especially share it. And if you are watching this late and you didn't get a chance to join us live, drop a comment. I always engage with those comments later in the day as well. Appreciate the ongoing support. If anything noteworthy happens between now and tomorrow, I'll do my best to chime in and give you guys some updates. If you want to get them while they're hot and fresh, I invite you to join us in the Material Indicators Telegram community. Links are in the description of the video and at the top of pretty much all of our assets on the website, on the X page, on the YouTube page, etc. Click that link and join us in the Telegram community. Great global community of traders talking about this stuff all day, every day.